My name is Nicole Snyder.
And I'm Eric Carmelo. When we were baby writers, we started out writing features, and we did that for several years, just selling pitches and kind of polishing people's movies, but we never got anything made. But back in the late 90s, you could actually make a living writing movies. Now, unless it's a Marvel film or something based like on a franchise or comic book or graphic novel, it's virtually impossible. But then we segued to TV, and Sera, if you don't know this, she was our first boss when she was running Supernatural season 6, and Nicole had just had a baby, and we desperately needed to work.
She was actually super pregnant when I met you.
No.
Or had you?
No. Oh, I wouldn't forget this.
Oh, was I super pregnant? And then when we came in again, I had had Olivia.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we met at the end of season 5 for this position, and you came in, I want to say like 8 months pregnant. And you were like, don't worry, the baby will be out by the time the room starts. And I was like, cool, because you're awesome.
But do you remember the second interview? Because that's crazy. I was late and I ran into the building and the doors closed on me. I went flying. I was in terrible pain, but I was like, we need this job. And we went upstairs and we sat across from me. You sat down with us first, just to kind of give us a pep talk and make us comfortable before they came in. Mm-hmm. And I was like this. And you said, are you okay? And I moved my hand and I had bruises going down from my chin to my chest.
I don't remember this at all.
You don't remember this? This is a big deal. And this is why you were awesome. And it meant so much because we got the job. And then you called us and you said, I love you guys. I'm excited to work with you. And I hired you because you're one tough bitch. You don't remember that?
I mean, that sounds like me. Something that's kind of exciting about talking to the two of you is that you're a writing team, which is something that a lot of people are curious about.
We've been writing together for 22 years.
22?
22 blissful years.
22, baby.
I'm sure partners say this all the time, but it is like a marriage. Look, when we started writing together, we didn't know each other at all. We met, we liked each other, we agreed to do a certain project and we were excited about it, but we didn't know each other. We shared one computer. We took turns typing.
Truly, the only reason we started working together was I was wearing a Chasing Amy hat, go Kevin Smith, and Nicole loved the movie, and we started talking about Courtney Love, and somehow I was like, obviously we're going to write together.
Obviously.
You know? So you started passing a computer back and forth.
Yes.
You were still in the womb since it was 22 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Totally. We borrowed it from our parents. We both had part-time jobs, and mine was in the morning, his was at night, and we wrote in the afternoon. It took us a year to write our first feature together. And then it's certainly evolved. I mean, at this point, we're best friends, and we have evolved our process where instead of both kind of hovering over the same scene, we break together. We break an episode of TV and then we divvy it up and we read it out loud to each other. We'll shoot it back and forth, but is more of a give and take than like two scared kids hovering around the same computer trying to figure out what we're doing.
Micromanaging everything, yeah. I mean, you build trust after 22
years,
and you also realize what your strengths as well as what your weaknesses are.
Did that evolution continue when you became showrunners? Are there stuff that you pretty much always handle, each of you, or does it flow depending on the day?
I think it does flow, but I also think that Nicole likes to be on set more than I do. I prefer being in a room. You know, I'm a shut-in at heart, so I just like to hole up and break story and write. And I think Nicole likes to be out in the field a little bit more. And I just think she has a better rapport with actors.
When I started, I had a writing partner too. We were very good friends, and we started by writing screenplays together, and we wrote specs and broke into the business together. And it became apparent to us pretty soon after we started working together professionally that the partnership was not going to go on forever. When it moved from being this relationship of self-starting together every day and working at home for a set number of hours a day into the world of you're working 14 hours a day together, it became clear over time that we wanted to do it on our own. So I have this sort of radar now when I'm in a room with a team, like I can tell if it's going well. between them. You know, there's a public face to a team, but I can usually feel it because it really, I mean, the marriage thing is a cliche, but it's also very true. It's a very deep and intimate relationship.
You know how they say, like, the couples that never fight, never argue, they're actually the couples that are doomed because they're never communicating or letting it out. And I feel like Eric and I fight in rooms. We fight publicly. You know, people think we're mad at each other, but I think we're just passionate and we're so close that we're not afraid to like fight over an idea. And generally we concede the best one wins.
Like, it's never disrespectful or, you know, purposely trying to make a fool of one another. It's just trying to land your idea. That's all.
This business is scary. So I give credit to you or any partners that kind of go their separate way because they know they'll be stronger on their own. I love having a partner and a safety net because there are so many jobs where I've wanted to cry, I've wanted to pull my hair out, I've wanted to quit. And I feel like having Eric there as a sounding board and as a cheerleader has saved me so many times. Oh my God, the quarantine has gotten me so emotional and vulnerable. Or the martini. But it's very true. It's true.
Television writing and television show running certainly is too big a job for any one person. You can call your partners and your collaborators and the people who give you assistance of various kinds. You can call them by a lot of different titles, but if you don't have any true partners, then you really are up shit creek.
I don't even know how two people can run a show. I feel like it takes more than that. It really does.
You're saying that at this point, when you approach a piece of material, you break it together and then you divide it up.
Yes.
Yes.
When you hit a point in the road where you disagree, before you get to the point of clarity, just when you're at an impasse, do you feel like you're at a place where your feelings and your ego stays out of it?
No. I think it's only we try to guilt each other into submission. Like, I gave you that last time. Just give it to me. I mean, whatever tactic it takes, you know, to land your idea. But it's only human to let your ego get involved, especially with any creative endeavor. You know, you got to keep it in check and learn to be collaborative. But at the same time, you're only human.
Do you recommend writing partnerships? Is it something that you think can be helpful for people? Or are you more like, well, if you had told me what it was going to be, I would have thought about it for a minute?
I would absolutely recommend a partnership, but it does take the right chemistry. It just has to be a right fit, like a relationship, like a marriage. Like, you have to work at it. You have to have complete trust. I definitely recommend it, but I don't think it always works.
22 years is a long time for anything.
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah.
So when you two and I worked together, that was the first time I ever ran a show. So you had me at my absolute greenest as a showrunner. And then you left and you had the same thing happen where you went and ran a show for the very first time. Can you kind of describe what it's like to make the jump into running a show?
I mean, you can't describe it. It's like jumping into the deep end of a pool without knowing how to swim, you know, and you're drowning and, you know, you might be able to get a few bubbles of oxygen, but then you go right back under. So it's just completely overwhelming. You're in the eye of a shitstorm and you can't get out. And things are being lambasted at you every day in a million different directions. And it's just nonstop.
I think when you're on staff, you take pride in what you're doing. You want to do well at your job. Your particular episode is your baby, but at the end of the day, there's someone above you. There's your showrunner watching. There's your directing producer watching, the network, the studio. Everyone's got your back in a way where the episode's not so great. Is it really your fault? I don't know. There's someone like over your shoulder looking, helping. Mom and dad are there, whatever. When you're running a show, it's all on you. Yeah. At the end of the day, it all comes back to you. The criticism, the work, everything. If you're not doing the prep, the production, the post, I mean, it all falls apart.
And if the review is bad, they're talking about you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, hopefully they're talking about the actors. then after that, they're talking about you.
And then it's like, your casting was shitty. I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Hopefully people are watching this and they're getting just a tiny bit scared of that role. Because it's not the worst thing in the world to have a little bit of staff experience first. You don't like have to become a showrunner when you're 23. It's a very aggressively managerial job. But I'm wondering if you know why showrunning is for you. I mean, if you didn't love it, I don't think you would put yourself through it.
No, it's like torture. I think for both of us, we've always been self-generators. We like coming up with our own ideas. We like seeing our words come to life. We like being bosses in the sense of wanting to make sure that your vision is properly executed, right? From the thought in the writer's room or the night before to when you pitch it to your writers to when it airs, you want to make sure you got it right. And I think that sort of passion is what you need to take on that job, which is all consuming.
I don't love the process. I find it exhausting. I really do. But and that's the honest to God truth,
right.
But I love the product. So at the end of the day, you have to go through the process in order to generate the product.
But that's very much an Eric thing. Eric loves editing a script. He always likes to say good scripts aren't written, they're rewritten, and he loves post. He loves sitting with the editors, and that makes sense that you don't like the process, but you like the end part.
What I love is people are going to watch this conversation and they're going to be like, I don't know, I feel like I'm a little more of an Eric. There's a Sex in the City kind of vibe to this where it's like, are you a Charlotte or whoever? And
Right.
And there's a place for both and all.
Before this interview, I was just thinking about Supernatural and thinking about like breaking our first episode. And I remember coming into the room to present to you and Eric and Bob. And I think we like did a lot of the work, but then we didn't know how to end it. And I remember writing something like, and then they like rub their binds together and get out and kill the monster. And you guys were so kind because you weren't like, well, how do they do it? Or what do they use to kill the monster? You were just like, okay. Like you were the gentlest parents going, okay, now let's take a step back and figure out. Do you remember that, Eric?
And quite frankly, that was even better than my first pitch. Literally, Sarah, my first pitch to you guys in the room, it was 3 words and I said, demonic tit implants. And Ben Enlin is like, yes! And you're like, how is that an episode? I was like, I don't know. Like, that's what I thought pitching was. Like,
this is kind of an interesting thing. So I've been talking to all of these writers of various stripes. We get into these interesting conversations about like what the beating heart of writing is for them, like why we put ourselves through all of this. I'm just talking about you and the idea, or you and the story, you and the page. Again, I haven't asked this of a team, and I feel like it has to be maybe a separate answer from each of you in terms of like, when you sit down and now you're experienced enough and have been for a while that you really know that it's going to suck at times. Do you feel like you know what the beating heart is of why you're a writer and why you're doing that? And if so, what is it?
I mean, I think first and foremost, we both consider ourselves storytellers. Quite frankly, if we weren't doing this, what the fuck would we do? You know, we don't want to be teachers. So I think that's like 80% of the answer, just feeling compelled to say something, to not necessarily be provocative, but we have something to say about society in general.
Do you feel like you've walked around like that since you were little?
I do, yeah. I mean, I made home movies that I was writing and acting in and directing since I was 6. So again, this was the early 80s. So it was like the dawn of like the VHS recorders at home. And my dad had gotten one and it was probably 35 pounds. So, I mean, it was probably half my body weight and I would lug it around and I would make horror movies with my sister and her friends. But I mean, I always felt compelled to just kind of tell stories.
Isn't that interesting when we're like that, when we're so young? It's like in our code somehow.
I think for me, writing is the only thing I'm good at. I mean, I have like a couple of other skills.
You're good at the game of horse.
I'm really good at horse. I'm good at Uno. No, I feel like I don't know what else I would do. I feel like it's the one thing I'm meant to do. It's maybe the one thing I've confidence in myself. And when I was little, I wanted to be an actor. And I think I'm a terrible actor and a much better writer. So it was like knowing you wanted to be in that world in the business, but not knowing exactly which role, and writing just clicked and producing clicks.
When you went to college, were you still an actor?
I went to an arts high school, and this is what made me realize I wanted to write. So we were supposed to keep acting journals, and I didn't because I thought it was stupid. But I kept a writing journal for myself. I wrote poems, I wrote thoughts, whatever. And when we had to hand them in, I just handed in my journal because I had nothing else. And the acting teacher says, "Oh, we had a writer in our class." And I was like, "Who's that?" "Oh, it's you." And so she almost told me, "You're a writer." And so put me on a path, and college still thought I could act. I'd always start on the path of acting and then shift to writing. And then here we are, drunk in the quarantine.
By writing. How's that going for you?
We haven't actually put pen to paper yet. Breaking has been productive in quarantine, but we have not sat down and written a script. And that will be really telling because I think they're very two different things. We've managed to be functional and creative and working on our new show, and we're working on a new movie and rewriting another movie. And so there's definitely stuff in motion.
I feel busier now than I've been in a really long time, and I'm not complaining because it occupies the time and it occupies your mind. And I think I need to have my mind occupied right now.
I guess I'm assuming you're feeling some level of anxiety or dread or weirdness about
100%. Yeah.
Does being productive and working on work stuff help you with that?
Yes.
It really, really does, because it just gives your mind less time to wander. I mean, I'm still waking up at 3 a.m. panicked, but at least that's not happening during the day because I'm so kind of like focused on work.
But you know what's interesting generating content now and like coming up with stories now is, do you speak to what's going on? So far we haven't, but will we get to a point in quarantine or just in life with Corona that you have to incorporate that into the stories you're telling?
We have a lot of questions about whether people will be interested in material that touches on this, or like how many layers of fantasy fictionalization do you want to run these feelings through? Because maybe nobody wants to hear the word pandemic ever again.
Right. Do you want to develop content for people to escape, or do you want to address the reality of the situation?
Thinking back to when you were not working with external deadlines that led to paychecks, or the times when you've had to start from scratch to come up with a new thing. Perfection was an original idea, right?
It was. It's fun when you write something on spec because truly you have no one looking over your shoulder. You're only writing to please yourself and your co-writers. So when there are no parameters, it's oppressive insofar as, God, there are no parameters, but it's also so liberating because you can write about anything and nothing is off limits and everything.
No notes.
Right, and no notes. So
what you're saying is so potentially valuable. I want to shine the little highlighter marker on you right now because, see, I know this because I know the two of you. When I watched that film, I was like, oh, this is really them. The joy it took in body horror, you know, the way the characters interacted, the kind of love story that was going on between them. Like, I've spent a lot of time in a room with you, so I knew that you weren't just trying to shock people or aiming for what the market requires. I felt a sense of authenticity and joy and just like, oh, they are doing their thing right now. And that's why this movie is fucking crazy. Just to put a slightly finer point on it, that what you're talking about is like when you are self-starting and you have no parameters, it's like, what do you like? What do you love? What brings you joy? What do you think is funny? What do you think is like so crazy that you can't stop writing it?
Well, like, I think the best little bits of advice I've gotten over the years from other writers or managers, one was never give up, because if you give up, it'll never get better. And also, if you're not writing what you love, it's so apparent. If you're not enthusiastic, if you're not saying, only I could write this and I need to write this and I have to because I love it, it shows. And I feel like right now, when there aren't those parameters or if people are writing a sample to get on a staff, now is the time to just say, no voices in my head, no producer telling me what to do, no studio telling me what to do. I'm just going to sit in front of my computer and write what I want to write.
When I started as a TV writer 15, 16 years ago, the industry looked so different. And I honestly thought I might never get to be a creator. I knew that's what I wanted to be, but that was the era of carpet fibers being brought to the lab to bring serial killers to justice.
Right.
And I was like, I guess I mean, I don't really care that much about cop shows, but I like people, like I can write this, I'll figure it out. And then the industry came to us in the last few years. A show like You could never have been made when I started in the business. So it's like the thing that you're saying, it's not that I didn't know that the stuff I was writing was weird. Like I knew. I was like, I'm going to write it. It'll probably never get made, right? But the industry evolves. So all of that to say, you can't really base your assessment of your own future on what you see around you today. Like
100%.
There's a bit of a leap of faith to take where you're just like, if it burns inside me, that's just going to be good enough. And we'll see what happens.
I agree. And it's impossible to telegraph the industry. Like it truly is. Anytime you try to telegraph the industry, you're always wrong. So write what you love, write what you have to say, write something that's fun and provocative and you think won't get made because that's why it'll get made.
Well, and I think the worst thing you can do in television is try to copycat because there's this weird pattern where we've noticed where like, okay, there's a hit show like This Is Us. Then there were 1,000 copycats. But things shifted by the next season and we were back to procedurals. So like if you're trying to chase that, I think just the timing will screw you. And so you go back to what do you love? What do you want to say? Doesn't matter that it's not like This Is Us because the tide keeps changing.
By the time you chase it, it's usually too late.
It's always too late.
I haven't seen you since The Perfection came out.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And that was like a huge moment, I feel like. I don't know if it felt like that from where you were, but everyone I knew was talking about it.
Yeah, it felt big. It did. It felt like it was the biggest thing that we had generated in our careers. So
when you wrote it, you didn't know what was going to happen with it. You wrote it on spec. So what happened?
It was all so fast. Like it was very atypical of a feature experience because like Eric said, we started in features. We were writing the same assignment for a year and a half and then it never got made. That was our experience. And Richard came to us with the idea. We fleshed it out. We wrote it in 2 months and he's like, okay, now we shop it. And Miramax bought it. And Richard had a relationship with Allison Williams from Girls. And she read it and she's like, you're fucking insane. Let's do it. And so we had sold it in August of 2017.
Yes.
And we were shooting it by the end of January 2018. September of 2018, it premiered at Fantastic Fest and Netflix bought it. And then it was on Netflix in May of 2019.
That's a kind of an exciting story. Were you scared to put your effort into something you thought might be too crazy? Did you think it might be too crazy?
I did. I mean, honestly, like when we wrote it, I was like, there's no way anyone is ever gonna make this movie. Like it's stump fucking and cutting off hands and like, it's insane. But I thought it was like funny. Like it deals with really heavy stuff, but it was darkly comic. And I just felt like there was no way that anybody was ever gonna make this because we had written like middle of the road stuff before and they still didn't make it. So I was like, there's no way in hell they're gonna make it. But it kind of just brings it back to the point that I made earlier that because we wrote it thinking nobody was going to make it is why somebody made it because there wasn't something like it. So it just struck a chord and it was also kind of at the height when we had written it of the kind of Me Too movement and Time's Up and it was saying something provocative and it was speaking to something that was happening in society and it was this really kind of twisty, fun horror movie on top of it. So it was like alchemy, like sometimes things work, sometimes they don't, but it was just the right place, right time.
And I got a lot of weird reactions from moms at school. I mean, I was just told I was a sick fuck a lot. But it's kind of a badge of honor. It's fine. It's accurate.
That's just pure jealousy when people point that
when they call you that.
One of the lessons that I learned in the supernatural room that people can watch your film and study if they want, people who aspire to writing cool horror movies, is that you really know you've got something in a horror scene or a scene of gore or body horror when you hit on something that is as universal as possible, right? Like the way we talked about it in the room was that if it's a haunting that only strikes Mercedes, then only Mercedes drivers have to worry and aren't certain kind of people anyway. But if it's just a haunted car or it's a haunted Civic, so there's one on every block, then you're onto something because it's just more universal, right? Desperately needing to take a shit on a bus in the middle of nowhere.
It's universal.
It's universal.
Right. Here's a tip for a shortcut. I want to write something, provocative in a horror movie. And like, what are my set pieces? It's like, well, terrifies you?
Right.
What would you be so embarrassed you would die? Like, start there.
Do we want to be inspirational or do we want to scare people? Never show running or writing. You know, like not only, as we were talking about earlier, is a partnership, a writing partnership, chemistry, relationship, like a marriage. I feel like a room has to have the right chemistry. And there is a room etiquette. It's not necessarily something you could teach other than be like respectful and kind, try to make people laugh and not in an offensive way. Like, I feel like those are some of the things you could say. But other than that, it's really like having the right personality to gel with other people. You're going to have the people that like to talk a lot, but hopefully when they do, they're saying valuable things. You have people who are silent the entire time and then they say the one genius thing. There is certainly a right balance in a writer's room and an etiquette that if you do not have it, I mean, you could just so easily get on someone's nerves, right? And it messes up everything.
Yeah, it's intuiting and being able to kind of read the room, literally read the room, you know? So it's a big part of the job.
Another thing that I became much better at when I had run a room for a while was understanding that my job, to like a pretty big extent, is to protect the people who dare to say the thing the rest of the room disagrees with, or who are quiet more often so that when they speak, the stakes feel higher to them. Learning how to create safety for that person, especially, by the way, when I'm one of the people who usually disagrees with them. Like even more so, I need that voice where you know, that the most contrary person is the most valuable person in the room sometimes. Okay, this was good advice. Do you have one more golden piece of advice you'd like to give people before I stop recording, Eric?
Writers write. They're just always right, truly.
That is right. Haters hate.
I mean, it's obvious, but it's true. You know, if you're going to build the muscle, you got to exercise. So fucking right.
I'm still waiting for the person who I ask, like, so do you have advice for writers? And they instead of saying writers write, they're like, you know, you really have to leave the $20 bill with the dark chocolate under the pillow or the script elves won't come to write it for you. I'm like, what? Wait, I can do that?
Well, but you know what I think is good too with that? I mean, yes, writers write. Undeniably, that's what it has to be. But I also think maybe if people have more downtime right now, watch the shows you haven't been able to watch, read the books you haven't been able to read. That's where I get my source of inspiration. Devouring books and watching shows that, you know, speak to me. But I feel like that's what's going to feed you right now and inspire you to write well.
And keep drinking.
I know that. Look, I did, you know, this is a good conversation.
Mine's
look, I just have my olives left.